If you're a beginner runner, choosing your first pair of running shoes can feel really overwhelming. There are so many terms thrown around: cushioned, stable, neutral, plated, and honestly, a lot of that just adds a lot of confusion. So in this video, I'm going to simplify everything for you. I'll explain what beginner women actually need to look for in a running shoe, and then I'll walk through real shoes that I physically own and stock, explaining who each one is best suited for. It's no marketing nonsense, it's just honest, practical guidance for information that you need when choosing your next running shoe. Okay, so let's say for instance you're in a shop and you're about to buy your next pair of running shoes. A couple of things that you need to consider. It's really important to ensure that that shoe is comfortable from the moment you put it on. If you're getting any sort of discomfort when you're stood in a running shop, or you've just picked up a shoe, let's say for instance you've ordered it online, that shoe doesn't feel comfortable immediately, it's the wrong shoe for you. Look for something else. And so a couple of things to consider is the amount of support you're getting in the heel, the width of the shoe. Now some shoes are really narrow across the midfoot, across that arch, are really narrow. So an example of that, just to show you. So Adidas always seem to create narrow shoes. And if I just put the two together there, you can see the difference in the width of these two shoes. The Saucony is fairly wide. The Adidas is quite narrow. And this is something that you need to consider. If a shoe feels like it's pinching here through that arch point, it's definitely not going to be comfortable when you're running. Don't be afraid of getting hold of the shoe and just testing it a little bit, putting it through its paces. If the shoe is giving you a fair amount of stability, a fair amount of resistance, you can see I'm twisting the shoe there just a little bit. When you're applying that sort of torsion to it, you can expect that that shoe is going to have a good deal of support for your foot. You are expecting the shoe to be able to bend this way where the toes are. That's completely natural. So just don't be afraid to get in there and do a little bit of testing with the shoe, so you can see how much resistance that this shoe is offering me in comparison to something like one of the carbon plated models. In front of me here, I've got this is the New Balance Rebel V4. It's called the Super Complete. It's a carbon plated model, and you can see that just at the bottom there, what's happening. But if I do the same test that I just did to the Saucony, you can see that there's a greater degree of resistance, but crucially, there's hardly any give in that shoe. Like, that's quite a bit of force that I'm putting through that shoe to try and get it to do that, and there's hardly any resistance. For a beginner runner, this is not where you want to be. This is an advanced shoe, it's a racing shoe, and you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, it's got a carbon plate in it, so it's going to make me run faster. Well, not necessarily. And the reason for that is because this shoe and the carbon plate is all dependent on the energy that you're putting through the ground. If you're a slower runner who's putting less energy through the ground on their foot strike, when that foot's hitting the floor, this shoe isn't going to make miracles happen for you, right? But if you are a faster runner, someone who's putting a greater degree of force into the ground, the carbon plate will bend and then offer you more energy traveling forward. That's where this shoe comes into place. You wouldn't want to wear this shoe in training. Perhaps you might want to break it in a little bit prior to a race day, but this isn't a training shoe as such. This isn't a training shoe. This is a race day shoe. That's exactly what this is for. This is for someone who's, going for a really fast 5K, 10K, perhaps even marathon or half marathon time. It's not a training shoe. You want to stick to shoes like we've just spoken about, like for instance, the Saucony Guide 18 is a really good start. This is just the Sweaty Betty collab, really popular. No difference in performance for this shoe. It's just a really nice example, popular example of a shoe that we've got in the shop at the moment that does really well. Aesthetically looks great, and it offers some really solid support to users. You can look at the width of the heel there, so that would be appropriate as a shoe for anyone who's a heel striker. So by that I mean that they are hitting the ground with the heel first, and then the foot is traveling through. This would be an okay shoe for that. It's often that you will see quite a bit of wear. This is actually a used pair, but you would see quite a bit of wear in around this point, in around the heel, if the person who owned it was a heel striker. In this, making sure that there's enough room in the toe box that when your foot hits the ground and ultimately spreads, because that is what your foot does as you're running, there's enough room for it to do so comfortably. A lot of people recommend, if they're taking a shoe on a long distance run, then they might even want to go up to a half a size to a full size up, because your feet start to swell. So if that shoe feels really snug, it's probably not the right shoe, and you might want to think about going up half a size. So there's just a couple of pointers for you when you're trying on the shoe first time round, what you want to be thinking about in terms of how it's feeling and how it's going to perform. A couple of other things you can do is just put it through some strike tests. Just jog up and down. Feels a bit daft to do it. Doesn't if you're in your own home, no one cares. Just don't stand there at a window. But making sure that you're doing these transitions. So what kind of runner are you? If you heel strike, then you need to be doing those steps and, heel strike and traveling through. How does it feel? Is your foot supported? Does it feel like it's transitioning naturally? Because not all shoes do. We've tested shoes like the Nike Pegasus Premium, for instance, and if you strike with your heel, that's not the shoe for you. You need to be a mid-foot striker, and the reason for that is because the shoe just collapses under heel strike and doesn't really transition through effectively the way in which you would want that if you're a heel striker. If you're a mid-foot striker, that might be a little bit more appropriate for you as a running shoe, but it's these little things that you need to consider when you're choosing your running shoe to make sure that you've got the right shoe for you. Other examples which fit in the same category, this shoe is the Brooks Adrenaline GTS 24. Again, applying that torsion test, quite a bit of resistance there for a non-carbon plated shoe. And again, if I just bend it through the middle, you can see it's offering that resistance. It's got a great deal of support around the heel and also around this area is called the heel cup. So it's going to grasp hold of the heel well and give you plenty of support in and around that area. Again, another shoe we've got on offer in the store at the moment. Really, really nice colorway. Like this shoe, it's really popular. Another shoe that we've got in at the moment is the Hoka Bondi 9. This is recommended by chiropodists for people who are suffering with things like plantar fasciitis, or if you've got high arches, this shoe's a good idea. Hoka always build in quite a lot of arch support into their shoe, so it's more pronounced here. Whereas some of the others, like the Brooks is like more of a neutral shoe, so you won't feel that arch support. Whereas there is a good deal of arch support in something like the Hoka Bondi 9. So if you've got high arches, this might be a good choice for you. It's got quite a large stack height in this shoe, and so by that, what that means is the heel at the back, how much cushioning is at the back. Well, you can see that there's actually quite a bit for this particular shoe. And if you hear people talking about the drop of the shoe, that's basically the difference in stack height from the heel through to the toe. So if it's more of an aggressive shoe, like a faster shoe, which we'll talk about in a minute, you would expect it to have an aggressive drop. And that's that, again, like I've said, that drop between the heel through to the toe. So, if it's beyond 10 millimeters, a 10 mil drop, 8 to 10 mil drop is fairly standard for a daily trainer. If you're getting beyond the 10 mil, we're talking about a really aggressive shoe. Probably not appropriate for a beginner runner, certainly. You're likely to see that in some of the race models that you'll see out there at the moment. So let's talk about this shoe. This is the Adidas Adizero Adios 9, and it gives you a nice clue straight away on the side of it because it actually says racing. So it's done you a favor straight away. Can't make a lot of mistakes with this shoe. You can see, looking at it, especially in comparison to the Hoka Bondi 9, the amount of cushioning in the heel, the stack height, is fairly minimal. You can see that shoe is going to sit pretty flat to the road. and the drop on it is also minimal as well. I don't know the exact number of this shoe, but I would reckon that that's, you know, single digits in terms of drop, perhaps 6 to 8 mil as a guess. I don't know for certain. I'll put it on screen exactly what that drop is. But if we do the torsion test on this shoe, you can see, especially across the heel there, and I'll do it upside down as well, that isn't giving you a lot of support at all. So for a new runner, I would steer clear of something like this shoe. This is a minimalist shoe. This is for someone who wants a really lightweight feel running shoe on their foot and doesn't mind the fact that there's very minimal cushioning. They're not going to get a lot back from the sole of the shoe, but that's by design. They've done that out of choice. They don't want a lot of cushioning and they prefer not to. But I would suggest that a new runner steer clear of a shoe for this for a time being. This shoe really comes into its own when you've got some more experience, as do a lot of these carbon plated shoes. These are shoes that you grow into. You don't buy them first time out, because what that will lead to is a very expensive mistake for you. You buy a shoe thinking, I'm making the right decision, this shoe's going to make me faster. But actually what happens is you take it for a couple of runs, great, you now can't return it, and you ultimately admit to yourself, actually that shoe is never right for me. And that's a shame for a lot of people. So hopefully by watching this video, you'll gain that information and make sure that you don't make that mistake. So another shoe that we've got here, this is the Puma Deviate Nitro 3. And there's some talking points about this shoe in that you'll hear there's lots of different terms for waterproof or Gore-Tex. This shoe, they use a term weatherized, and that basically just means it's a waterproof shoe. So this is ideal. It's a road running shoe, and you can see that that's a worthy point to make actually. All the shoes that we've spoken about today are road running shoes. This is a road running shoe, and you can tell that by, if you just look at the tread, see the way that if you, hopefully that picks it up on the camera, it's relatively flat. So that's going to give you maximum amount of traction on a road or, you know, a lightly graveled surface. If we're going anything beyond that, certainly if we're going down muddy trails, then you want a trail shoe. And the way in which you're going to spot that is the depth of tread. I don't have a trail shoe in front of me, unfortunately, but the way you would spot that is the depth of tread would be much more prominent, and it's going to allow you to gain traction on poor ground in poor conditions. So yeah, this is a carbon plated shoe as well. And one of the ways that you can tell if a shoe has a carbon plate is because usually the manufacturers will show you, and Puma have done so here with the power plate. You can see that in the middle. And again, we've spoken about how that would behave. Rigidity, fairly rigid with the torsion test, really rigid when we start to put any sort of pressure through the toe. So that's a really nice example of a shoe that's in the store at the moment. Hopefully you found what we've spoken about useful for you today. Hopefully you've got a little bit more information to help you when you're purchasing your next running shoe. But what I would say is if you've got any questions, then just drop them in the comments, and I'll either do a video where I deal with the issue for you directly to help explain it to other people so that they don't have the same problems, or I'll just fire a response straight back to you.